Awesome, Ed. Thanks so much. Hi, good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to tonight's webinar on entrepreneurship from ideation to execution. For those that don't know me, my name is Ben. I'm the External Relations Director here at the Mandela Rhodes Foundation. So this evening, it really is my privilege to open the session up, and I'd like to start by extending a special welcome to our speaker, Dr. David Kirn, whose incredible entrepreneurial journey will inspire and guide us a little bit this evening. We're also delighted to have some scholars and alumni with us, as well as members from the wider MRF community joining us in this virtual space. So I know that many of you have recently engaged pretty deeply with the theme of entrepreneurship, especially our first-year scholars who have just concluded their workshop on this subject. So for you tonight, this is really an opportunity to build on that foundational learning by hearing firsthand from someone who successfully navigated some of the global entrepreneurial landscapes, some of the stories that we'll hear from David in a bit. For our second-year scholars, this offers a valuable opportunity to learn from an accomplished entrepreneur such as David, who's taken many ideas from concept through to reality, much like you guys have also done in your program. And here we will look at how practical advice can be provided by translating great ideas into real-world outcomes. And obviously, for our alumni who are still very much a big part of the Mandela Rhodes family, it's a chance to reconnect and to refresh your own entrepreneurial mindsets. So a little bit about Dr. Kirn. He's a physician scientist. He's a medicines designer, developer, a biotech entrepreneur, and a CEO with over 25 years of experience in the industry. His career focus is on viral vector-based therapeutics, including gene therapy and oncolytic virus cancer immunotherapy. He's led programs from design concept through to phase 3 clinical trials. He's the co-founder and CEO of multiple viral vector-based therapeutic platform companies. And if that's not enough, he's also a professor at the University of California's Berkeley. He is an active teacher and he also mentors students in the biotech entrepreneurship space. David, we're truly honored to have you with us this evening. Your wealth of experience will really, I have no doubt, resonate deeply with our scholars and our alumni. And yeah, looking forward to just having you experience some of our what we have in terms of our scholars and our alumni. So, yep, thank you very much. Awesome to have you here. So Edward is going to, as he started off by saying, the purpose of today's session is to explore and to learn from David's entrepreneurial journey in all its complexities, the highs, the lows, some of the failures, the things that didn't work out, and as well, hoping to tap into some advice that he may have for aspiring entrepreneurs, including those pitfalls to avoid, or if David, I'm sure you've been in rooms before where you've had people putting proposals in front of you, and you've probably seen it all, but would love to hear from you about what are some of the most common things that you like to avoid when looking at these types of proposals. And then just to sort of end off before you hear before I finish up, it's just to say that the webinar fits very tightly in with the Mandela Rhodes Foundation's broader commitment to fostering thought leadership and innovation on the African continent. As an organization, we truly believe that entrepreneurship is not just about scaling businesses, but it's also about using our talents, purpose-driven spirit, and our creativity to allow Africa to take its place, its rightful place on the global stage. And to be a force with which to be reckoned with, both as an equal and yeah, to have that true presence. Yeah, I think Ed, I think yeah, maybe if you want to just take us a little bit through about the the theme of entrepreneurship that flows, and then we can kick off.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you so much to the beautiful scholars who have joined us here. But yeah, before we sort of jump into the meat of today, obviously we are in an MRF space, despite the fact that we are on Zoom. We are still, in the MRF community, and it's obviously Monday, it's the start of the week, and we've all had varied days. I know it's the morning there by David, but it's a Monday evening here in Cape Town and in South Africa. So I thought it would be useful to just to breathe, as Mapumba implores of us. Oh, I see Carly's there with little Naomi. Welcome, Carly. Great to see you. I'm sure the scholars are very excited to see you. Hey, Naomi. Yeah, as I was saying, I think it's important for us to just sort of land in the space and wash our minds of the day. So I invite you to all sort of just, sit up in your chair, nice and straight, and just take a deep breath in for 4 counts. So deep breath in and hold and exhale. Let's do that again. Deep breath in for 4 counts. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 2, 3, 4. And let's do it the last time. And as you breathe, just feel you inhaling the energy and exhaling the tiredness of the day. So let's inhale. 3, 4. Hold. And exhale for 4. 3, 4. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, guys. I hope that, we feel a bit more centered. We feel like we've landed. And obviously, we are all about connection, both connecting and checking in with ourselves, but also checking in with each other. And our check-in question for today is very brief, very simple, but I'd like you to reflect on what is your highest hope for our time together. I'm just going to pop it in the chat. What is your highest hope for our time together? Ben has beautifully framed our the intention of the session, entrepreneurship, the first-year scholars, second-year scholars having both tackled entrepreneurship, albeit from different points of view. So coming in and having read David's bio and, seeing that he's a Silicon Valley bro, what are some of your highest hopes, right? What do you hope to, leave today's session with? And I think that would be really helpful for David as well as we get into the session. So I'll give you a couple seconds and you can pop your answers in the chat. So you can just pop your answer in the chat of what is your highest hope for our time together today. And if you don't mind just popping your country of origin, you can pop the flag, you can pop the name of the country in there just to give David a bit of an idea of, the Pan-African nature of our organization to see where we all come from. I'm seeing David said to get some of that silicon from the valley. Love that. To learn something new, Yamkela says, thank you so much. I love that, David. Just waiting on some more responses. What is your highest hope for our time together today? Emma Swart says to be inspired by the stories of others' success. Love that. Love that. Thank you so much. I'm hoping to leave here resourced and inspired. Kuchalo from Zambia. Thanks, Mebelo. Ben, to hear some real stories from Silicon Valley. I think we've seen so much in the movies, so it would be good to hear from someone who's actually there. I don't want to expect. I am open-minded. Love it. Thanks, Ben. Susie from Namibia. I'm looking forward to learning more about how to tackle entrepreneurship and turn ideas into tangible work. Kudzai says to cultivate more from another well of wisdom. Beautiful. Frank says to make money and also see Coralie. Love that. Thanks for joining again, Corals. Bernard, hoping to get some insights dealing with imposter syndrome and the fear of trying. Very interesting, very interesting. And then Melissa from Zimbabwe says to be inspired to take action on our incubating ideas. Beautiful. Loveness says to know what are the greatest lessons in his entrepreneurship journey. Kamogelo says self-belief and resilience amidst the hardship. And John Saleh Singbay II says to consolidate my experiences from first year program and the second year program. John from the motherland, from Liberia. Liz to get to learn and get inspired. And I'll do one more here. Evelyn to know what makes a proposal funding worthy and to learn more. Beautiful. I'm sure more will come in and we can sort of see some of the expectations from the evening in the chat. But thanks again, everyone, for being here, for joining. It feels lovely to be amongst my MRF scholars, my MRF family. And this is really where we all find our energy. So thank you once again for being here. And David, I know you've had lots of, actually, before we continue, David, what is your highest hope for our time together? Let's hear from your side. What is your highest hope for today?
Well, I hope to be interesting and educational and inspiring to all of you. And I really look forward to learning from all of you. I'd love to hear what your dreams are and your aspirations and also your hardships and see if there's some way I can help.
Beautiful. Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I'm sure this will be a really generative space for us all to learn. So yeah, as I said, David, you've obviously spoken to Judy. We've had touch points in the past, and you've learned a bit about our organization. And really, our mission is quite simple, right? It's to find, fund, and empower brilliant young African leaders like we have in the room today. And we not only wanting to help develop leaders who are technically proficient, but also who have a deep commitment to improving their communities and improving the continent of Africa. And I thought that to really give you a deeper sense of how this program impacts our scholars, I thought I'd invite a couple of them to just share a brief reflection on their time with us as scholars, what this program has meant to them, and yeah, how it has shaped how they show up in the world today. Just to give you a little bit of the truth, a little bit of the MRF spirit. And yeah, so I'd like to invite, so you'll hear from some of our first year scholars and some of our second year scholars, a bit about what the program has meant to them and how it continues to influence and shape who they are and how they show up. So I'll start off with David Akobe to reflect on his second year experience, as well as his first year experience and how the program has shaped how he shows up in the world today. I think I saw David's name here. David, if you don't mind unmuting. And
yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Ed. Can you hear me?
Beautiful. Yes. Just say your name, where you come from, and then you can start.
Oh, okay. Hi everyone. I'm David from Nigeria. And yeah, just briefly, I would say three things that I highlighted just for this brief was community, family, and love. And I think for me, what the program means, I remember just when I wanted to come and when I applied, and I just felt, okay, yeah, they'll fund my studies, and then I just study and I move on. And I didn't expect to find the kind of community I had. I didn't expect to be challenged to look inward into myself as much as I did. And I didn't expect to find the kind of comfortability I found interacting with other people from various countries and just being grounded and just feeling like I belonged to a family, not just for now, but forever. So I think for me, that's one thing that has really stood out through the program for me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, David. Really, really appreciate that. Let's hear from one of our first year scholars. I see Omar Cisse is in the call. Omar, do you mind unmuting and letting us know where you come from, what you are studying, and yeah, how the program has impacted who you are today?
Hello everyone. So I video off because I was thinking. So can you hear me, guys?
Yes, it's a bit sticky, but continue. I'll let you know.
Issues on my, or maybe I can just watch it on the chat. Okay, can you hear me, guys, now?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So, guys, my name is Omar from Mauritania, the first scholar, and yeah, Actually, the program was super, super wonderful. Like, as actually a Mandela alumni, I can say now I'm proudly a Mandela Scholar alumni. And yeah, it was a really wonderful program. Like, actually, from self-discovery, from like, trying to know myself, and from, also reconcile myself also. It was really a wonderful experience. So yeah, I'm really grateful for this actually program, and yeah, looking forward actually for the next.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Omar. Really, really good to hear from you. Yeah, I'll quickly hand over to Ruth Kasanga to share a bit from her side. Ruth, do you mind unmuting and telling us where you are from, what you were studying, and how this program has impacted who you are today? Ruth, are you there? I think Ruth might be experiencing some technical difficulties on her side. Yeah, let's end off with Liz Mwangi. Liz Mwangi.
Hi, Ed, and hi, David. Super lovely to have you here. Yeah, I think the word that probably comes to mind is wholesomeness. Very all-rounded, very much structured around really understanding who we are as people, as leaders ourselves. I think definitely I am still, simmering on a lot of what we've learned in the past 1 year, as well as this year, which has really been about how do we take who we are from within, and then how do we share that with the outside world, and how do we do that from a place that's very intentional and very much led from within. So I think wholesomeness is the word that comes to my mind. And I am from Kenya. I am currently studying at the University of Cape Town, and I'm doing a master's in environmental humanities.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Liz. And yeah, I wish we could hear from all of our scholars, and hopefully in the future we'll have David in person and he can come to one of our workshops and really engage with us all. But I think that was really lovely to just hear from some of our scholars and how this program has impacted them, both first year and second year scholars. So thank you so much for sharing. And David, I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into the work that we do at MRF, and how our program is not only about obviously academic proficiency and excellence, but it's also about holistic growth and this personal transformation. So thank you. And I hope that you have landed a bit. I see you're unmuted. Would you like to respond?
No, thank you to everyone for sharing those thoughts. And it's very inspiring what you do.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Since you're all unmuted, I'll now hand over to you to start your masterclass. Thank you so much again. I'm just double checking that you are able to share your screen. You can just let me know if there are any issues regarding that, but otherwise you can share your screen and start.
Perfect. And I think we were thinking about maybe half an hour for prepared talk and slides, and then lots of time for question and answer after that. Is that right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, very good. Well, maybe I'll start with some introductory comments before I go to the slide deck. But again, as a teacher and a structured thinker, I like to lay out principles. So what I'll try to do through the slide deck is just highlight key principles that I think are very helpful when one thinks about the entrepreneurship journey and how one can succeed. I'll try to insert along the way some of the lessons I've learned that I've experienced to make it more interesting, kind of tell my story. I do come from the biotechnology world, so really focused on pharmaceuticals and new medicine discovery and development. But I'm hoping today that I can highlight principles that are not unique to my area, but are generalized to any entrepreneur in any field. So that'll be my goal as I go through. And if you want to ask questions either verbally or in the chat along the way, please do. Otherwise, we'll certainly take everyone's questions at the end as well. Does that sound good? Okay. So I'm going to share my screen now.
David,
And-
just while you're doing that, sorry, it's Ben.
Yeah.
I would, no objections to us recording this, David.
Not at all. No.
Lovely. Ed, can I ask you to pop that on?
I hope it's worth recording. I'll try to make it worth your recording.
Well, it will be for us. We're really excited. Thank you, David.
Okay, good. Can everyone see the slides? The slides are okay?
Yes, we can.
And I think it is
Okay.
recording as well. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good. All right. So we said we'll try to focus today on entrepreneurship and what are some of the principles and some of the ways of practicing it in a way that can make you as successful as possible. I think you've already heard my background at California, Berkeley, and also as a founder and CEO at 4D Molecular Therapeutics. So, with that, we talked about the goals and the outline for the presentation today, but just to review one more time, goals will be to discuss and bring to life the principles and practice of entrepreneurship. I really want it to be a discussion in a nice, healthy interaction. The outline for my initial presentation prior to the Q&A will be a little bit about my journey. I'd like to start with definitions. What is entrepreneurship? What is innovation, which goes hand in hand with entrepreneurship? What are some of the principles of entrepreneurship that we need to think about when we're starting and growing a new venture? What are some of the stages of an entrepreneurial organization as it grows and evolves over time? And I'll finish off by talking a little bit about the role of the founder and the CEO, because I imagine many of you here today, that will be your role with a new venture. Okay. So my background, you heard about it. So I started as a physician scientist, so a doctor and a scientist, and I really thought I was going to stay in academic medicine. That was my career journey. I had education at these nice universities, Berkeley, UC San Francisco Medical School, Harvard, back to UCSF. And so lifelong learner, I really thought that this was my path is to be an academic a physician. So that would be research, teaching, and patient care. And everything seemed fine. And I'd had some faculty positions at UCSF Medical School in San Francisco. I also did a sabbatical where I was at Imperial College London and actually had a visiting scholarship, professorship position in pharmacology at Oxford. And so everything seemed to be on this path and was all fine until I caught the entrepreneurship bug. So why did I make this jump in my early 30s when I was at UC San Francisco at a comfortable faculty position there? And why did I jump into entrepreneurship, and in my case, biotechnology? And I must say at that time, biotechnology was brand new. It really had just started. So this was sort of the early to mid 90s. And it wasn't clear whether biotechnology as a field was going to be successful. It wasn't clear whether it was going to be sustainable and grow. It was brand new, this concept of applying these novel technologies to life sciences and actually commercializing those findings. Historically, pharmaceutical companies were really big chemical companies. They weren't doing, bioengineering and chemical engineering and DNA manipulation and protein therapeutics, antibodies, et cetera. So it was a risky time, and many of you may be looking at the field you're going into, and it may be a new time for that field, and you may have a lot of questions around, what is this field I'm getting into? How likely is it to be sustainable? And so that's something I really went through. And I heard from a lot of friends and family that this was kind of crazy, that I built my entire career to get to this, ivory tower medical school. And what was I doing jumping into this brand new field, especially as an entrepreneur? It sounded very, very risky to people. Many people said it wouldn't work. It was crazy. And so you may feel the same when you talk to your friends or family about entrepreneurship. You may hear a lot about, boy, isn't it really risky? Isn't there a safer way to go? And the answer is it really is risky, and it is very, very difficult. So you really have to have a deep, deep passion that this is what you must do with your life to really be able to enter this world and fight and persist and ultimately, hopefully succeed when it is so difficult. So it's nothing you get into lightly. And I certainly went through that thinking. Why did I do this? And for me, it boiled down to a few principles I'd like to share. So first of all, I felt as an entrepreneur, I could make a big and lasting impact. And I know all of you are dedicated to that too. And so why do I say that? Well, I felt that as a team, as part of an organization that grows over time, my ability to have an impact is much greater than myself as an individual in academic. You know, most academic labs at a university might be 10 people. Well, I now have 250 people working for me. That's just a different scale, and it means a much bigger impact. So that was a big driver for me. Another was creativity. You know, entrepreneurship, there's a lot of creative thinking, innovation, strategy, and I really loved that. I didn't want to just be executing and seeing patients day in and day out or focused on one thing. I really wanted to be able to be creative across a range of things. The other thing is teams. So I grew up playing team sports in Silicon Valley. Soccer or football to you was my favorite, and I still play that today. But you know, I love teams, and I love the fact that in a team, everyone knows their roles. There are complementary roles that allow us to all work and survive and thrive together. And so I felt that entrepreneurship was much more a team than being an academic professor. And I just love that. And I remember the first time I went and visited a biotech company, how much I felt that sense of team. It's exciting. Sometimes it's terrifying. It's very scary sometimes. Sometimes it's depressing. Sometimes it's exhilarating and thrilling, but it's never boring. So if you don't want to be bored, it's probably a good route for you. Leadership, I felt like I enjoyed being a leader. I was frequently captain on my sports teams, and that's something I loved. So being a CEO and founder of a biotech, of a new venture is certainly a way to build your leadership capabilities. It's a challenge. I don't like to be bored. As I said, I like to be challenged all the time, and I always like to be learning. And as an entrepreneur, you will always be learning new skills. You know, you'll have your technical functional skills, but that grow, but you'll also have these personal life skills in all these areas that will grow over time and be challenged and stimulated. Okay. So from that, 25 years ago, I've now had 4 different startups. Actually, there's a 5th that's not on here. You can see the names of them. These are just the logos, but and at one point I worked with Johnson & Johnson, a big company, in their innovation center to help other startups. I also now help startups at UC Berkeley in the life sciences area. So we help new companies get started out of some of the research that's going on at the university. So it's something that I've been now very, very passionate after having jumped in about 25 years ago. My companies are typically in the pharmaceutical space and new medicines. And my first 3 companies were focused on cancer treatments. And now my 4th company is doing treatments for major eye problems, lung problems, and heart problems. Okay. So that was a little bit about my journey, and we can get back to that in the Q&A. But let's start with some definitions. So what do we mean by entrepreneurship, and what do we mean by innovation? So this is my favorite definition of entrepreneurship. I like to break it into 3 categories. So first of all, you're creating a new organization. Now, many of you, as we'll say in a minute, could be starting a new company, but you could be starting a new not-for-profit as well, or starting a new unit within an existing organization. But step 1 of entrepreneurship is really you're creating a new organization. This is not an individual person just going out and doing their thing. This is very much creating a new organization, a new team. Innovation. So usually entrepreneurship is linked to innovation, a new idea to produce technology that has value for your customers. Now, your customers, again, could be someone who pays for your service, or it could be a social or environmental problem that you want to fix. But it usually brings to bear new technology. And the reason that's so important is that's the only way you can scale. You know, if you want to start a new business and say, I'm going to, have a auto mechanic shop and I'm going to hire twice as many people as the guys next door. Well, that's a viable business, but it's not really entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship has to use innovation to produce a novel technology or process to scale and build value for your customers. And then resources. An important part of entrepreneurship is that the resources that you need to be successful are not under your control. So if somebody has all the money in the world and they maybe start a brand new organization, sometimes some people say that doesn't really fit the entrepreneurship definition. Could be an exciting new venture, but it's not. The definition is really you have to go out and accumulate all these resources that are not under your control. So that could be money to fund the business. It's people to work for you. It could be intellectual property. That could be software. It could be a new medicine. It could be a new tool or product. But these are things that are not under your control, and you have to access them and accumulate them. And so a big part of entrepreneurship, a lot of what you spend time doing is getting these resources and bringing them in to build your organization over time. Okay, why is entrepreneurship so important? And I think it's arguable that the vast majority of important human achievements involved entrepreneurship at some level. Whether it was discovery or building something, it was a group of people with cross-functional skills, different skill sets, coming together as a team to build an organization, to build something of value. And usually it involves, again, innovation to take things to the next level. So I do think if you think about it, entrepreneurship is all around all the time, and it's really responsible for a huge number of the achievements in human history. So what are some of the types of entrepreneurial organizations we think about? Well, the first one we typically think about is a new company. Some people call it a new co. And this would be like a new Silicon Valley startup that's going to have some software to do something or build the iPhone or something. I grew up in Silicon Valley, about a mile away from where Steve Jobs, who's the founder of Apple, lived. I was 2 miles away from the garage where Hewlett Packard started, HP. And so I grew up in an ecosystem which was all about entrepreneurship. I was close to Stanford, which had a very high quality business school where they really focused on entrepreneurship. So, there are certain regions that are rich for entrepreneurship. And for me, it was all around me. It's just I didn't know how I was going to apply it because biotechnology didn't exist. And I wasn't interested in computers or software. But at any rate, a new co is typically a for-profit company, and the goal is to either access certain markets and outcompete other companies in those markets, or to create brand new markets. You can also have what's called intrapreneurship, where you start a new unit within an existing company. So some big companies realize that they aren't innovative enough. They don't have that entrepreneurial spirit. So what they'll do is they'll start a new unit, and they'll let an entrepreneur build and drive and scale that unit within the confines of a big company. That's a different kind of entrepreneurship. And then the last one is, again, a new organization. This could be a not-for-profit organization designed to solve or improve a social or environmental or some other condition. This is also very much entrepreneurship. It takes all the same principles, all the same skills to succeed, whether or not you're trying to make a profit or not. Okay. So when we talk, that's entrepreneurship. So we talked about the three things: a new organization, a new technology that has value to your customers, and then accessing the resources you need to build the company. So what is innovation? We throw this word around a lot, and we talk about innovation, and some other people who've really studied this have broken innovation into 4 different types of innovation, depending on how novel the technology is and the impact on a market. So it starts with a new idea, obviously, a new idea to develop a new technology. And a technology is basically a human tool, right? So typically innovation is a new idea to design and develop a new technology, and typically it has to have value to other people. So, you know, a work of art is a beautiful thing and makes our lives better, but it's not technically innovation because it doesn't lead to direct human value in the way we think of in a company. So there's creativity that spans a lot of different things. And then specifically when people talk about innovation, they're really talking about an idea to generate new technology that has value. Now, when we talk about 4 different kinds of innovation, on the y-axis here, we have the impact on the market, and on the x-axis, we have the technology, novelty, or newness. And you can break innovation into 4 categories based on that. So here in the lower left, you see incremental, gradual improvement. So this is, you know, someone's got an iPhone now. Samsung comes out with a phone that's just a little bit better. It's got a few bells and whistles that maybe the first one didn't. It's incremental. It's still a phone. It's still a smartphone. Then you have something that's not low tech, but in having a bigger impact on the market, a significant improvement on a product that sustains a position in an existing market. Radical here in the lower right, and I like to be up here in the upper right, and that is disruptive technologies, where you have a brand new technology that's has a huge impact and novelty in terms of its newness on the x-axis, and also a huge impact on the market on the y-axis. So for me personally, this was engineering viruses, which can normally cause disease, and re-engineering them to make them safe delivery tools to deliver medicines to cells in the body. So that, as you can tell, that's pretty new. It's pretty different. It's pretty risky. But if you succeed, it has a huge impact. It's a whole new way to design, develop, and deliver medicines to people. Okay. Principles of entrepreneurship. So I tried to boil these down, like what are some of the key principles that I think about whenever I start a new company or organization. So I like to start with like the 3 key ingredients that you need for successful ventures. So I think this comes into this concept of when you look at a funding proposal, for example, if you're an investor, or let's say you're a person in this Mandela Rhodes Foundation ecosystem, and somebody has a new idea for a company, and you're saying, should I join this new venture? Now, these are the things you really have to understand. So number 1 is, what's the opportunity? What is the thing where people say, imagine a world where we could do X, right? So this could be, imagine a world where, you know, every child in your country has access to clean water or education, or it could be, imagine a world where we have medicines that are much more effective and safer than current therapies. For example, when I started in cancer treatments, all the treatments were poisons, basically. Chemotherapy made people very, very sick. And our vision was, hey, could we make smarter targeted medicines that wouldn't make people sick, but would be much better at killing the cancer? So these are opportunities. And if you don't have a great opportunity, you'll never get anyone to join or fund your new organization, because that's what gets them excited. That's why they join. And a big part of being an entrepreneur is getting people excited. You are constantly recruiting people. Once you hire people, you have to retain them. So you're recruiting them to stay. You're recruiting investors. You're recruiting business partners. So if you don't have an exciting opportunity, there's nothing to recruit with. So that's a big, big part, is, can you articulate a clear, exciting opportunity? Number 1. Number 2, there has to be a problem. Otherwise, everyone would access that opportunity already, right? So we said, hey, an opportunity would be, what if there was a beach in California where you could go sit in the sun all day and go on the waves? Well, that exists already. So it's not really an opportunity for an entrepreneur. So there needs to be some critical problem that is preventing people from accessing that opportunity. So it's, what's this opportunity? Imagine a world where we do this, and then there's the but there's this problem, and what do we do about that? So now this is where the entrepreneurship comes in, the solution. And what you as an entrepreneur have to provide is the solution. And oftentimes it's an innovative solution, means it's a new idea, a new tool, and something that then solves this problem, overcomes the hurdle, and allows you to access the opportunity. So it's really these three things. I think I see so many pitches from entrepreneurs who want funding or help with their company. And it takes them, they can talk for an hour, but you never hear these three simple things. What's the opportunity? It could be a market. It could be a social condition. What's the problem that prevents other people from accessing this? And how do you uniquely solve that problem through innovation? That solution should differentiate you from other companies trying to do the same thing. So there may be many companies trying to, say, cure cancer, but my solution has to be highly differentiated from others so I can get people behind it. So they say, yeah, that's the answer I want to work on. That's the solution that I want to work on and that I think is most likely to succeed and have a big impact. So I'd say if there's one thing that entrepreneurs need to start with, it's this. And it's very simple, actually, if you boil it down. People use, 50-page pitch decks, and they go all this data and this and that, where what people really need to hear is three simple things: opportunity, problem, solution. Okay. Now, what are some of the other principles of entrepreneurship? And I would say, as a scientist, I like to think of entrepreneurship as constantly doing experiments. You don't know what's going to work as an entrepreneur because so many things are out of your control. And these are things that are internal to your company and external. So the internal things that are out of your control might be the science. I might have a good idea for a new medicine, but who knows? Biology is complicated. Diseases are complicated. Maybe it doesn't work the way we think it's going to be. Maybe it has an unexpected safety issue. So there's a lot out of your control there internally. And then there's the external world. So think about how COVID just disrupted everything overnight for 2 years. Well, you can't control that, but you have to find a way to survive, right? There's in my world, the NASDAQ stock market. It goes up and down all the time. Investors come, they go. A big driver for us in my area of biotech, since there are long timelines, is something as silly as interest rates. Interest rates will drive the stock price of my company more than any sort of data I can present to people in advancing and building the company. So it's kind of crazy. So just remember, there's all these things that are out of your control. And so what you have to be is like you have to take advantage of nature and evolution, right? And think about, how am I going to evolve and adapt to the changing conditions around me? Okay, so I like to think of it as do an experiment, see how it works, figure out what you want to do next, and do another experiment, and on and on. So it's sort of a loop. So the first step in that loop really needs to be customer discovery. So you'd be surprised at how many people don't really do this. Like, as a business, at least, you need a customer who's willing to pay for what you have. And so a lot of times people come up with a great idea, but it's sort of a technology looking for a place to apply it. So customer discovery is saying, who are my customers? Do they want what I have? And so a lot of times in the sciences, for example, when you do an entrepreneurship course, you force the scientists to get out of the university and go talk to people in that field who might be their customers. And they're supposed to do 100 interviews, 100, as part of these courses. And when they come back, they may realize, like, hey, this thing that I thought was so great, nobody wants it, but I found out that my technology could be used for this other thing over here that someone really does want. And so you have to be open and humble and say, even though you think something is great, you have to make sure your customer thinks it's great. Okay, so who are your customers? What do they need? And how can you address that? The second is you generate what's called a minimum viable product. And this means whether your product is a physical tool or a medicine or a new process or way of doing things, you generate something that's good enough to start, and we call this a prototype, to address the need, and then you test it and see how it does and see what your customers think. So you get feedback. So with software, you get the prototype and they beta test it, and then they adapt based on what you find, and then they show it to more people, and then they adapt again, and they keep iterating, right? And so a big part of entrepreneurship is that iteration. So you have your customer, you develop your minimum viable product, you test it, you get their feedback, and then you adapt. Sometimes you'll hear the word pivot a lot in entrepreneurship. I don't love pivot because it means maybe changing direction completely. I view it as more adapting and evolving and honing in where you want to be. But the concept is adjusting and adapting. And then finally, you have to repeat this. So at 4D, for example, we've been around for about 12 years now. And I'd say we've significantly changed our strategy and our lead products probably 4 different times at least. Now, the purpose hasn't changed of why we exist, and I'll get to that in a minute, but this is really important because the world changes and you have to adapt with it. Okay. So what are the stages of an entrepreneurial organization? So there are really 3 that I like to think about. The first is the inception or the start, the concept, the ideation, right? And this is really a concept. It's a decision of whether you start this organization. It also has a lot to do with your founding team. So I'll get to this one in a minute. The second one is actually creating the organization. That's usually a lot of legal paperwork, to be honest. You need lawyers for everything in a startup, in a high growth company, and the creation stage requires a lot of incorporation, registering with the government, developing all sorts of shareholder agreements, etc. So that's a big part of the creation. And then in my world, where it's very heavy on the technology, usually coming out of a university, it would be licensing the technology out, getting the rights to the technology from the university, from a tech transfer office into the company. And so that's a whole probably 2-hour lecture on its own. And then scaling. A big part of entrepreneurship is going beyond just that starting crew and actually building and scaling so you can increase the impact of your company, your technology on other people, on your customers, and continually expand. And so that takes a whole different skill set, a whole different set of issues. I'm going to start today just with briefly on the inception or ideation stage, because I think it's probably where many of you are today. Okay, so I like to start with questions. What are the key questions you should ask yourself when you're starting a new organization as it relates to the organization? Now, on the next slide, I'm going to ask you personal questions. What are some of the things you have to ask yourself as an individual as to whether this is right for you? But in terms of the company, I like to start with the end in mind. Like, what are you building and what does this look like when it's mature? Because you'd be surprised how many people kind of start and they think about the next step, but they're not thinking 5 steps ahead. So you really have to ask a question, when this thing is mature, if it works the way I hope it will, what does it look like? What am I actually building? Because that will help you understand the impact and the steps involved to get there. You hear this a lot. Why must this company or this organization exist in the world? This is very, very difficult work. So you have to have a big impact and you have to have a lot of passion. So when you look at you inward at yourself, you say, why do I think this organization must exist? Because you're going to be challenged beyond your wildest dreams to make it so. So you have to really, really believe that this must exist in the world. You'll hear this BHAG when you read the literature. It's called a big, hairy, audacious goal. I don't know if hairy translates necessarily to all of you guys, but it means like it's challenging. It's very challenging. And audacious means like, wow, really? You think you can do that? And so most entrepreneurs who are successful have this idea like, hey, I can do anything. Now, many of them fail, and that's okay. And many ventures fail. It is hard. Doesn't mean they succeed all the time, but they start with a big audacious, meaning challenging, difficult, but big impact goal. We talked about this opportunity, problem, and solution. So we want to walk through that, make sure that's clear for you. Customer, we talked about how important the customer is because you're gonna need them as part of this whole process to be successful. Who are they? Who will buy it? And then financing is obviously a big thing for all of us. I like to think about, an entrepreneurial venture is like an airplane. You're building it, you're flying it at the same time, and this financing is the fuel. Now, one day we can say it's an electric airplane and we'll say it's the electrons, but at any rate, for today, it's the fuel. So you can have a great idea, you can have a great team, you can be poised and ready to go, but if you don't have fuel in the tank, you're not going to go anywhere. And so financing the venture, it's very important to think that out ahead of time, because that's probably the biggest challenge. I think it's the biggest stress for most entrepreneurs, that and human resources and the people. But you really, again, want to think 3 steps ahead. Don't just say, oh, I can get a little seed funding here and live for the next year or 2. You have to think about the next one and the next one after that and the next one after that, because those requirements for financing come up very quickly as you're growing and you're increasing your spend. And so thinking through the financing steps is really important. Okay, so these are some of the questions you have to ask about the organization. Now, what about the personal questions? I'll get to vision in a minute. The personal questions. So as I said, this is very, very hard, and it's going to have a huge impact on you and everyone around you. So you have to ask the question, first of all, what's the opportunity cost? You're all very talented. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. You're obviously creative, hardworking. You're going to be successful in a lot of different areas. So when you think about starting a new entrepreneurial venture, you have to ask a question, what's the opportunity cost? What am I giving up and not doing because I'm doing this venture? And what are the alternatives? What else could I look at? And a lot of people get so excited and they just jump right in, myself included, and they don't actually think about, well, what else could I be doing? And is this really the best use of my time at this point in my career? Maybe you're going to be an entrepreneur, but maybe it's not now. Maybe it's in 2 years. Maybe it is now because you have an amazing opportunity. So you have to kind of ask that question. And what are the pros and cons of doing this venture at this time in the market and history and everything else around you, and the technology? How evolved is it? These are all important questions. Team is huge. So you're going to be starting typically with co-founders, right? Or, if you are the founder, you're going to need to bring in a team of people who have different skills from you very quickly. Who are they? Are these people you want to spend 12 hours a day, nights, weekends, or not? You get to know your founders better than your family sometimes. Are you all aligned on the vision for the company? Do you all agree with what you're building? Sometimes in my world, you might have somebody who says, oh, I want to build the next great pharmaceutical company, and that's going to be a 20-year effort. Somebody else may say, no, I just want to build this thing and sell it off for a bunch of money in 3 years, right? That's a problem if you don't have aligned vision. So you make sure you have an aligned vision for the company. Are you all aligned for your personal goals? Are you all in it for the same thing, so you're aligned when things get hard? Do you have a aligned mutual commitment? It's a problem if one person is spending 80 hours a week on this and somebody else is spending 2. If somebody's really deeply in it and others not. It's not that they don't have a right to have different opinions, but they have to be aligned to be an effective team. And then the other thing in a for-profit venture is ownership. So ownership in a company is called equity. It's basically typically shares of stock or stock options. We can get into that later, but your ownership of a company is what percent of that company do you own? What percent of those shares in the company do you own? And so when you're starting out, it's very important to sort that out. Is one person bringing more value or going to work harder than another? They should have more shares. Do you all get all the shares up front, or do you have to earn it over time? So these are just important conversations to have with your team. Family. Now, again, this is a sacrifice for everybody in your world. I can honestly say, and I have a great life, don't feel sorry for me, but I can say there has not been a single family vacation over the last 30 years that wasn't disrupted by my company work in some way. Now, again, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Don't feel sorry for me, but my family sacrifices a lot. When I'm raising money for a new startup, I may be traveling and on the road 50% of the time. I'm under incredible stress, and so that probably comes out with the people that I love, right? And so you just have to make sure that your family and the people in your, whether it's a biological family or your friends who are part, like act like your family, they all have to be in on this and understand what they're getting into, because it's going to impact all of them and you're going to need their support. Another thing when you're starting a company is, how do you make enough money to survive? Because until you raise money, you can't pay yourself a salary. Now, for me personally, I was very, very fortunate that as a industry trained doctor and researcher, I had a consulting business. So what I did is I had a consulting business where I made money as a consultant from different biotechnology and pharmaceutical companies to pay myself, so I could then work on a new company where I wasn't getting paid and support my family. So again, if you have a family who's depending on you for resources, you need to find a way. And I think this is probably one reason a lot of founders and entrepreneurs are very young. It's because frankly, they can sleep on people's couches, they can eat ramen every day, and they don't have people relying on them for funding. So the later you get in your life, and once you have a family, etc., this becomes a big pain point that people have to figure out. Again, for me, I was fortunate I could have a consulting business to pay the bills until the company got big enough that I could raise enough money to give myself a salary. Okay, so that's the inception phase. So I'd like to wrap up the prepared discussion with the roles of the proximate founder and CEO. You're probably familiar with this term proximate founder, but the founder is somebody who starts an organization, and proximate means you have deep personal connection to the kind of the mission or the opportunity or the problem that you need to solve with your company in that area, whether it's you come from that region or you come from that industry or you come from that sport where there's some need that you want to fulfill because you understand it deeply. And then typically, at least initially, the proximate founder would be the CEO. So then when I think about the top leader, this could be CEO, maybe in a not-for-profit, it's an executive director, president. So what goes into this? So I like to start with accountability. As a CEO, everyone thinks CEO is the boss and you get to tell people what to do. It's the opposite. If you have a new venture, you're accountable to everyone else. And that means inside the company, that could be your employees, your team. You have to recruit them. You have to retain them. These are talented people who could work a million different places. And externally, you have investors, you have board of directors, you have partnerships with other companies. You're accountable to everybody, and so you have to enjoy that to be happy in this role, because it's challenging. And the problem is, obviously, you have lots of different people who need different things from you all the time, and they may be in conflict, right? What somebody outside wants and somebody inside may be very different. So accountability. Number two is vision. To raise money, to hire people, to retain people, to sell your company, you need a vision, because that's all you have. You don't have money when you start. You can't pay people a lot of money. You can't force them physically to work for you or to work with you. You have to have a compelling vision, and you have to be able to articulate it, right? So when I think about vision, I think about four pieces to the vision of an organization. One is the purpose. Why do you exist? Okay, it's the why. Why must this company exist? For 4D, our purpose statement, and it's a mouthful, but every word is carefully selected. It's boldly innovating to unlock the full potential of genetic medicines for millions of people. And every single word in there is an attempt to differentiate us from everyone else out there and say how we're different and why we exist. So that's the why, and that's how you attract people. It's how you attract money to finance it. The values or the culture or the guiding principles, you can hear all of these. This is how we do business with each other, both internally and externally. And when you generate these, you want to try to make them as differentiated from what other people would say as possible. So if you just simply say respect, efficiency, blah, 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 that's fine, but it's hard to differentiate yourself from other organizations. At 4D, our guiding principles are dare to cure, meaning we're going to try to make medicines that are so good we can actually cure people. Breaking boundaries, meaning we want to do things new, different, smarter, faster, and take risks doing that. Relentless execution, meaning we have to be just dedicated and relentless and prepare more than everybody else in our industry to make sure we succeed or give us ourselves the highest likelihood of success. And the other is beyond yourself, which is what you guys are all about here today. You're all beyond yourself. You're here because you want to make the world a better place for other people, for your family, for people you don't even know. And that's a guiding principle for us as well. Now, these two parts of a vision has 4 parts. These 2 parts never change. This is why you exist and how you operate in the world. What does change and pivot? Because we said this is a dynamic thing where there's a lot of evolution and pivoting. Well, that's your goals and strategy. So your 3 to 5, I like to think of goals in terms of usually 3 to 5 years. And some people call this a mission, but these are like the top 3 to 5 things that you must achieve in the next 3 to 5 years to be successful. You see, these are the most important things. And then your strategy is essentially scenario planning, where you look at how could I achieve those goals? And that's all about creativity. Strategy is creativity. How are all the different ways I could achieve this? And then sitting back and looking at the pros and cons of all of them and selecting the best way forward for you to achieve your goals. That's strategy. So those do change. They're dynamic. And these are, again, called pivots. And they should change because you're adapting to the internal world and the external world all the time. Okay. So CEO, executive director, top leader has to be accountable to everyone. You have to set the vision and maintain that and get people to buy into it. Team, you have to build a great team. It's a huge part of my job is identifying, recruiting people. And I'll tell you, as the company grows and changes, the team you need changes, right? So when I started out, with just, a scientific idea and a little bit of data from the university, like the top thing I needed was a chief scientific officer, right? I didn't have a big organization. I didn't need a chief financial officer yet. I didn't need a commercial or development officer yet. I just needed a chief scientific officer and a lot of hardworking scientists. Now that we're getting close to commercialization of our first medicine, I've hired a chief commercial officer, a chief development officer. We have a chief financial officer. So the team that you need at each stage is different. It's one of the hardest things about entrepreneurship is understanding that the team that got you from this point to that point is not necessarily the team that you need to go from here to here. Some people end up staying in their role, but it gets smaller. Some people adapt and change their role as you grow, and some people leave the organization. And that's okay. It's part of the evolution, but you have to be open as a CEO to changing and adapting and improving your team all the time, just like you would do on a sports team, right? Okay. Communication, a big part of this role is communicating. I'd say 95% of what I do is communicating, right? You're communicating the vision, you're communicating your plans, you're communicating to internal groups, employees, your executive team, you're communicating with your board of directors, you're communicating with your customers, with investors and shareholders. You're communicating all the time. Different CEOs have different communication styles, and that's fine. You don't have to be a salesperson. You can be just yourself, and you should be yourself, because then you'll come off as authentic. But you do need to communicate and enjoy communicating to people. And then decision making, I like to think that, any decision that's an easy decision should never even get to me, because I want to empower my people to make their own decisions. But what comes to me are the most impactful decisions, or the ones where there's conflict and there's people are not agreed or aligned on what the way forward is, and I have to sometimes break those ties, because otherwise you get paralyzed. So a big part of CEO role is that decision making of the hardest or most impactful decisions. Again, whenever possible, you try to drive consensus with all the different stakeholders, but sometimes there's disagreement. You just have to decide and go. I like to think about constructive paranoia. Paranoia, I don't know if you know that word, but means you're constantly worried about something. And I like to think, as a good CEO, to be, I call it constructive paranoia, meaning you're constantly worried about what could go wrong, and you're preparing. So if it does happen, you're still okay, but you're not doing it in such a way that you get paralyzed, right? So it's constantly thinking about what could go wrong, but then preparing yourself for success, even if that does occur. And then financing, of course, is a big part of the role, is getting investors or donors to put their money in, so you have the fuel to build a company. I know there was interest in financing. I'll just show a slide quickly on the different sources of financing. In my world, at least, grants are where you get money to build your company without giving up ownership in your company or any future markets for your products. That could be government or not-for-profit foundations. Investments are basically where you get money in return for ownership in the company or equity. And this could be private rounds before you're public. This could be seed, then angel, then series A, B, C, and onward. Crossover rounds are rounds right before you become a public company. So those are all types of private investments. Public investments, you'll hear IPO, or initial public offering. That's when you first go public on a market and you raise money. And then after that, there are many ways to raise additional money once you're public, and that never stops. It's like every 12 to 18 months, I have to raise more money to feed a biotech company. Business development is partnerships with other companies where you get dollars from them in return for sharing your market or your product ownership with them. And that could be, they give you money up front. They can give you milestones as the product gets developed. And then once the product is sold, you can share the profits or get royalties. And each of these is defined by certain regions or certain products that are part of the deal. So I'd like to finish with just a quote. And, this is a hard job, being an entrepreneur and building a company or an organization. And it's very daring. You have to take risks and put yourself out there, where most humans don't like to do that. They don't like to be vulnerable. And so here you're daring to make a difference. So this is a quote from a United States president named Teddy Roosevelt, who had some great aspects to him and some not so good aspects about what he did, and historically in retrospect. But I love this quote that he had, which is, "It's not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he or she fails, at least fails while daring greatly." And so as an entrepreneur, it's very important to keep this in mind, because there are a lot of naysayers. There is a lot of negativity around. People say you can't do it and this and that. And it's important to keep this in mind, that just by trying and working hard to make a difference, is that in and of itself is success. So thank you very much for your time, and I really look forward to your questions.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate that. So many insightful nuggets. And yeah, I just seen Abraham say, this is really juicy. Entrepreneurship 101, yet broad and deep. especially reflecting on our two IP projects. And I see the clapping hands across the room. And yeah, I just want to thank you so much, David, for your insights, for your presence, for your effort. And a lot of the stuff you were saying were like, yes, it's so aligned with both our first year program and our second year program. Made copious notes, especially around customer discovery, feedback, and pivoting. Those are things we keep honing on in the second year program. So it's good to know that we're on the right track. And I'm sure the scholars have found value. So I'll now like to open up for some Q&A. If you are keen to ask a question, just pop your hand up and then I will call on you. And if you'd like to prefer to type a message in the chat, please do so. And you can just type it out and then I'll read it out. While you sort of think of a question, I'd like to know, David, you said you were a football fan. What team do you support?
All of them. I actually like Liverpool.
Oh, no. Okay, let's end this right now.
Are you a Man City guy or what
Man United, actually, unfortunately.
Oh, Man United. Wow.
But we're reaching across the aisle, love across boundaries. Munaka, I see your hand is up. Feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you so much for the session. I think it really expanded a lot of the technical vocabulary that we desired at the workshop when we were dealing with entrepreneurship. So this was really great. I sort of have two questions for you.
Sorry, Munaka, just mention where you come from, what you are studying.
Sorry. So I'm from South Africa. I am an honors student. I'm currently studying development studies in the sociology department at the University of Cape Town. And then the two questions that I sort of have for you, the first one is in terms of entrepreneurship, like, I don't know if this is specific to the South African context, it could be to the context that you come from as well, but there's almost sort of like ethical blurry lines. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think is important for maintaining ethical integrity whilst in pursuit of growth and scaling, particularly in the field that you're in, which deals with human beings' well-being? And then secondly, you were describing how entrepreneurs require a level of grit and perseverance. And some people have gone as far as calling them sociopathic, like they're so focused, they're so zoned in. Some people describe working like 160-hour work weeks in order to be successful. But what is one characteristic that you are convinced is the most compelling for an entrepreneur to have, whether it is innate or it can be taught? And the last question is, how do you think entrepreneurs should take care of their mental health, considering all of the things that they go through?
Could you say the third question again? I didn't quite get it.
Mental health. How do you think entrepreneurs can best maintain taking care of their mental health? Because it is a very lonely and isolating part most times.
Yes. So maybe I'll take them in reverse order. So mental health obviously is very, very important. In any endeavor where you're working hard and you're getting challenged, I think you really have to think about taking care of yourself first and really saying, what is it you need in your life to be sustainable? Because if you just burn yourself out, you're not going to help anybody. So, for me, I know I need exercise every single day. It's my release. I love spending time with my family. It recharges me, my friends. And so I have to make sure that I find time for that, even when I'm working very hard. And so I think just being aware of yourself and what you need in your life to be sustainable is really critical. In terms of working hard and grit, I think good entrepreneurs, I think they know how to work hard, but also maintain their relationships with other people, maintain their other interests, and again, make it sustainable so they don't burn out. I think you have to be, as a CEO and founder, you have to, first of all, just be a good human being, right? People aren't going to want to work for you if they think you're a jerk. Or that you don't have their best interests at heart. So I think you have to just be a good human being and say, yes, I'm building a company or an organization, but I still have to be a good human being. You mentioned the ethical part. I think it's really, really important that you always adhere to strict ethical standards. When I think about people I work with and hiring and firing, you know, if somebody means well and they're working hard, I'll give them a second chance, a third chance. We'll find places where they can succeed. Even if they're failing in their current job, we'll find a way to make them succeed somewhere else. You know, that you can always work with, but integrity, you just can't. It's just, if somebody's low integrity, if they're not thinking about beyond themselves for the greater good of others, then it's just not a good fit, and it's always going to break down the culture in your organization. So I think that's really, really important. And so I think it is, you do, in terms of entrepreneurial characteristics, you have to be very hardworking, obviously, but good with people, good communicator, and again, that grit where you're willing to get knocked down many times and keep getting back up. It's very hard, you know, to get where I got in medical school and all this. Obviously, I did well at a lot of tests. I was constantly getting good feedback. I was doing different activities and succeeding, and you feel very good about yourself. And then you start a company and you need to raise money, and 99% of the time, people will say no when you ask them. And for people like you to get in this program that you're in, you're obviously hardworking, very successful. You're not used to people saying no to you.
Yeah.
No, I don't like what you're doing. And so that's a big part of that grit, is understanding, that's okay. That's normal. When you're an entrepreneur, most people should say no, because what you're doing has never been done before, and it's very, very hard. And so you have to take it as a badge of honor and say, yes, most people say no to me, and that's okay, because it means what I'm doing is very difficult and challenging and could change the world. But you find enough people who support you, get on board with you, and you can succeed.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, David. I see there's a question in the chat. And Mantom, you can just alert me to it if I've missed one. So Kudzai asks, good day, David. Apologies, my Wi-Fi is poor. We in Africa have volatile environments in terms of politics and economies. What advice would you give us working in environments that are so fragile?
You guys are the experts at. I've been blessed, and I'm very, very fortunate that I came from a state that was had excellent education. I always went to public schools, public universities, and had an ecosystem that supported me. So I understand what you're saying, and I think that must be incredibly difficult. But I wouldn't think that I'm in a position to tell you, other than wherever you can, just find reliable, high integrity people that you can rely on, and work to build those relationships. And hopefully, with your network, with this program, you can even go outside of your own home country, if that's not a supportive place, to find organizations and people to support you and help you succeed. But I imagine that would be incredibly difficult.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I see Janet, your hand is up. You may go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much, Edward. Hello, David and everyone. Thank you so much for the amazing information you've shared with us today. I'm from Nigeria. I'm currently rounding up my master's in molecular and cell biology at the University of Witwatersrand. And my question is regarding your team. When you're building your team at every stage, how open are you what's your strategy in terms of recruitment of your team? Is it focused on expatriate, or are you open to young, motivated people who are starting off, because the confidence, are you able to risk taking young folks that have a certain kind of value set, or it just has to be someone with like a lot of experience? What's your experience in this?
It's a great question, is how you build a team and recruit. And I think it changes over time. So when you're starting out, you may not be able to get the people who have the most experience in that area, right? You're a brand new company, you're small, and And so you may have to take people who maybe don't have as much experience in that thing that you need. Maybe they're more junior, but you have to get started. And so you do that. Once, like now, 12 years later, for my current company, we're publicly traded. We have a lot of investments, so we can go out and get people who have 20 to 25, 30 years of experience doing exactly what I need them to do. So it changes over time. When you're starting out, often you'll take people straight out of the university and say, hey, if you're willing to work hard and learn, we'll do this. And then later you're hiring experts. And so it really changes. I would say when you think about recruiting, it's important to say, what are the things this individual must have? And then what are the things that are nice to have? And so one of the must have is you have to figure that they're going to thrive and align with your culture or your guiding principles, right? So when we interview, the way I think about it is you wouldn't even be interviewing people if on paper they didn't have enough of the technical functional expertise for the job. What you're really doing is saying, will they fit here? Will they thrive here? Do they fit with our guiding principles? Again, you spend so much time with these people, you have to enjoy being around them. And so that's how I think about it, is what's a must-have, and that includes the cultural fit. And then the nice to have would be, how much experience and everything else. And there you can be more flexible early, and later you really need to hire people who have deep expertise as the company grows. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm seeing some more questions come through. I know we are a bit short on time, but if you'd like to stay a bit longer, feel free, and we'll sort of go through the questions that are here. Yamkela asks, David, I admire the passion you possess for your cause, and I'm sure it has no doubt carried you through the toughest of times. Given the amount of personal sacrifices you've undoubtedly had to endure, do you feel it was all worth it? I love that very existential question. Thank you, Yamkela.
Yes. For me, yes, for sure. There are definitely times as an entrepreneur where you think, boy, what would my life have been like if I'd stayed in academic medicine, or maybe I joined a big company that was more established and I didn't have to have all the challenges and difficulties of being an entrepreneur. But at the same time, for me, I know what makes it worth it for me is I know my work matters every single day. What I do, what I bring to the table every day matters to a lot of people in the company and outside the company, especially patients. And so for me, it was definitely worth it. But I think each person has to ask themselves every few years as they're in a career and ask questions, is this really the right way I should be spending my time today?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, David. I see Melissa Bebe, your hand is up. Feel free to ask your question.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and good morning, I think, for David. Thank you so much for the presentation that you gave us. And as you were speaking, I was thinking, I'm from Zimbabwe, and my background is in medicine and surgery. I did my undergraduate in that, and now also using the word pivoting into health economics. So I'm constantly talking about the cost of providing healthcare. And I was wondering if there's an opportunity to attract investors from Silicon Valley into Africa. And as I was thinking that we don't have a shortage of problems here, we have problems galore, and some of the solutions that we need might not be as attractive to investors in terms of the problems we have to deal with equity and access, and price points might not be attractive to investors. So that's my question number one. I think I'll leave it there.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's great. I think when you think about the opportunity that you want to solve, and then the opportunity you have, and then the problem you want to solve, I think it's important to ask the question, is it best done as a for-profit company or a not-for-profit organization? It sounds like you're grappling with some of those things. Certainly, one of my dreams in the next phase of my career would be to find a way to link up investors with companies in Africa, a place that desperately needs the funding to access all these great new ideas and build great companies and organizations. So I think that's going to come over time, for sure. I have a friend from Silicon Valley, for example, who started something called RippleWorks. And again, maybe Edward, you could share the link for that to them. But RippleWorks works with companies, generally for profit, but not always, who have some social good involved in their mission in Africa, and they give grants out, and they also help connect entrepreneurs in Africa and some other regions with entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley who have specific skill sets that can help these companies scale. So I think there are resources out there, and I think it's just going to get more and more over time as people realize the potential of Africa.
Thank you so much for that, David. I think you're recognizing how, with the problems that we see every day, most of us, I'll speak for myself, very much inclined to wanting to start something not for profit. But when you think about it, we want to move more into being business minded and making profit and still bringing social value. So thank you for that.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to each, right? I mean, one of the nice things about a for-profit, and it can have a very big impact, a good impact in the world, is it's very sustainable, right? If you make revenue and you can build, then it can be more sustainable in some cases. So I think both for-profit and not-for-profit have their own pros and cons, but they all can make the world a better place. There's a question from Jessica in the chat that looks pretty interesting. How transparent are you with your team about financials? Is transparency the key? His workforce does not want to know the details, or does want to know the details regardless of their level. This is very, very true. I think in the olden days, people used to just keep the employees in the dark. And in today's workforce, they're wired in, want to know everything in real time. And so we're very, very transparent. You sometimes hear about radical transparency, but we try to be as transparent as possible. Definitely with the executive team, nothing's a secret. And then with the broad population, as much as we can, we share, because I think they need to know, and they will trust management more. And if they don't trust you, they're not going to work with you and for you. So it's very important. At the same time, with my need to worry all the time about what about this, what about that, I have to not share all of that, because then I will paralyze my people and they'll be too worried all the time. So it's a fine line between always planning for the future and what could happen, and then being as transparent as possible with your people, but not giving them unnecessary distraction or worry for something that may never happen. So, but that's a great question.
Thank you, David. Really, I'm seeing many more questions here. I think in the interests of time, I might only have time to do one more, because we did sort of say we'd end at 8 p.m. But thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, I apologize for going over. I didn't.
No problem. Well worth it. So let me do sort of one last question in the spirit of Madiba and finding consensus. So yeah, Melissa Muchiri asks that, loved what you said about empowering your team as a leader so that they're able to make decisions such that only the most consequential ones reach you. Regarding building consensus, in the event that it is not possible to build it and a difficult decision needs to be taken, how do you proceed as a leader in moving the team forward amid potential tension? Yeah.
Really important question. So I think, first of all, everyone needs to be heard. I think for people to get on board, they all need to feel like they had an opportunity to express their point of view and their position, such that if you have to make a decision where some people don't agree, they can still get on board because they feel like they were heard. So I think the first and foremost, the biggest thing is making sure everyone was heard, that you also are transparent with, if you have to make the decision because there's not alignment in the team, that you have to be transparent with how you came to that decision. So if I have complex decisions to make, I like to make a table typically and have all the different variables listed out and all the different options, and then show people why I made the decision I made. So they at least understand it and respect it. So A, everyone needs to be heard. B, you have to be transparent with how you came to the decision. And then lastly, everyone does need to get on board. It's really, really important that even if there's disagreement and fierce debate, which is good and healthy, and I love that, at the end, we all have to say, okay, we can't all agree. We need to make a decision and go, this is the decision. Here's how I made that decision and why. And now let's all get behind it and try to make it as successful as possible. You can't have people who are still angry or upset about what they did or did not get in the decision. And you need to have that open debate and then be able to move past it and really say, okay, now we're going to go and we're all unified. And so the people in the other people in the company don't see that we're disagreeing at the executive team. They have to see that we're aligned and we're all pulling in the same direction. So great question. Thank you.
Thank you again, David. I think that was a great question to sort of end on, since we are the Mandela Road Scholarship, and working with consensus and reaching across divisions is sort of what we are all about. So thank you so, so much. Kayla says, hoping you'll deliver a man of the match performance, getting your next outing on the football pitch. As a Liverpool supporter, I hope you don't. Once again, David, thank you so, so much. Deep gratitude on behalf of all of our scholars and the MRF as an organization. We appreciate your time. Such valuable information. And yes, scholars, the slides will be shared so you can dig a bit deeper. And if you have any questions, feel free to send it to me via email and I'll pass those on to David. And yeah, thank you once again. Appreciate you also staying after the sort of time we would end. Thank you so, so much. And I hope that the next time we engage with David, it will be in person. So I'll be lobbying for that for next time. So thank you once again, everyone. I don't know if you have any last words, David, you'd like to say to the group before they leave.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real honor, and definitely I hope next time is in person.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much, everyone.
David, thank you so much. Amazing. That was really, really insightful. And thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.